idea that how can you save someone if you can't save yourself?
Yeah.
Do you believe those who are kind of struggling can handle what it takes and the stakes to be a hero?
I think anybody has what it takes to be a hero. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's one of the themes of the film. I believe in that.
I mean, I think it's an interesting thing that I think it's the opposite. Like, I think that if you spend all this time working on saving yourself, isolated in a room, on your phone, and thinking about how you're going to fix it, you're ruined. And I think what you need is to ask other people and to be vulnerable, to go out into public and into a group and say, I need help. And I think that's how you save not only yourself, but other people. And I think, so much of the deep layer underneath this movie is this isolation that we all, and this divisiveness that we all have together, where we're all alone thinking we can figure it out or get a handle on it. And really the only way we're going to get a handle on it is through community. I mean, we are social animals, human beings. And so I think that's the sort of fun, subtle layer of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the only way, the only way through is that. Now, there's an element of having to make sure you are secured in your thought process in certain ways on your own so that you can be of service. But like David said, whenever I've had difficult times that I've gone through, you revert to this idea of like, I can get myself out of it. Usually the times that I've gotten myself out of it are when I've gone to somebody and created focused on the connection with somebody else. That was what brought me out of feeling depressed or anxious or something. Like when you focus on somebody else and that connection you have, that ends up bringing you out. And it's not like, I'm not going to sit here and read self-help books for a month. That doesn't that can have the opposite effect sometimes. So yeah.
I think that I guess in this movie, in a weird way, we thought less about heroism and more just on the traditional ideas of being a hero, and more about just on a character level, like what it takes to get out of that place. That if you're stuck there and if you're stuck in those thought loops, that when you retreat into isolation, it's pretty hard to get out of there on your own. And so there are these people some of whom, were meant to be this kind of, the individual golden hero, Walker as Captain America or Alexei as Red Guardian back in Russia, and things haven't worked out, and they're stuck in this much darker place now. Maybe it's not so much about being that kind of individualistic hero, but could you become something bigger as the sum of your parts if you found, sort of through connection, a way out of that place?
Well, I think what you said is absolutely true. I think, that's why in so many ways, the thesis for this is, is outreach and speaking up. And because you can't, if you can't save yourself, like you need that opening, that bridge. And so I think that's, obviously the first step. You can't save the world until you do that first, I feel like.
Yeah. The anti-heroes and the villains are usually assholes. They're intrinsically assholes.
Yeah.
At least to each other, they're kind of assholes. Why are these guys intrinsically assholes, and how much fun is it to kind of play these kind of characters?
I think, being the villain, we've had it hard. We had it really hard. We were never, for Ghost, she never wanted to be, she was 6 years old when I don't think she was making any decisions of whether she wanted to be a hero or a villain. I think she was looking up to her dad and his amazing work with Hank Pym, and then the disaster struck. And then actually, interestingly enough, it's Hank Pym and Ant-Man who are the heroes, and it's Ghost who's kind of left and being the villain, but she's not, she's surviving. And I think it's that kind of, heroes and villains, anti-heroes, heroes, what it means to be a hero, and what it means. It's like, what does success mean? What does that all mean? In this movie, I think you've just find a group of people who have had it hard. They've had it really hard. They haven't, and the decisions that they've made, they were good people who have done very bad things. And do they get a second chance? Do they deserve a second chance? They want another chance. Do they want to be a hero? And don't suffer alone in that. And because there's a similarity and a thread between all these characters in this movie, and I think that's going to be a really relatable thing.
I mean,
think you're
I think
Red
that,
Guardian's
yeah,
an
well, he's just like a narcissist to the
Right,
extreme,
right.
and he's deranged.
Yes.
Like he won't listen to, he doesn't understand, he doesn't take people in, he just takes in what he wants.
Right.
So in a way, he's like psychotic.
Yeah.
But in a sweet way. Like,
Yeah,
I think he
very.
means. I think, yeah, that's the fun thing about all these people is like, I guess when I watch the movie, and I think it is something that we were trying to bring, is like, you see there being these jerks and everything, but I don't know, for some reason, and maybe it's just the people playing them or something, but like, I see their hearts in all of this. And like, I remember showing up on set and even like, I keep throwing Sebastian under the bus, but like, I do remember, like, you know, he can be kind of cranky, and I just fell in love, and I just laughed at him, and there's something about your hearts that just come through, and you go like, oh yeah, they're mean, or they're cranky, or they're doing bad things, but like, you can tell that in the right situation they'd make the right choice, or if they learn just this one little piece, it might turn them. And I think that's the hope that you always are carrying with these people. It's the reason why you want to stick with them. They're also somewhat self-aware of their own. I mean, the movie starts with Florence saying, there's something wrong with me. I think they understand that they're not in the best place. And I think that's beautiful when people have that self-awareness, even if they can't quite transcend it yet.
And well, in the movie, Bob, it's essentially saved and like surrounded by these anti-heroes and former villains trying to redeem themselves. How was it for him to kind of be like, oh, I've been saved. Oh wow, these guys are actually kind of mean. Assholes. Poor assholes.
I mean, I think that there's something about that dynamic specifically, that allows audiences to kind of connect, because each one of them is sort of dragging around these massive sandbags of grief, and it's like they just need somebody to help pick them up and carry them with them for just a little while. And I think that Bob recognizes that, especially with Yelena, you know, that despite, you know, what might seem like an asshole, it is all a protective mechanism, because they've been hurt in the past, because they've learned to not be able to trust anyone, because they've been, you know, they've been duped, or they've been let down so many times. So I think there is something about him that is able to, that's why he's able to trust them in some ways, is because he sees that sort of similar nature.
It's sort of outside the box of the norm of what they do at Marvel, which I really like. I think they're very relatable. All of these people have these issues that are human issues, and maybe they behave badly and so on, but you know, to feel isolated, to feel depressed or ashamed, these are human feelings that we all feel at one time or another. And so the idea of trying to understand that, where it comes from, as a way of getting beyond it, and finding grounding in relationships with others, these are great themes that, you know, make the movie a better thing.
But what's going on in Val's mind? Because, you know, there is power that, you know, as a woman, it's difficult to get there. But, you know, it's not black and white.
No, it's not black and white. That's why it was so much fun to play her. You know, she has an insatiable desire for power, and you get a window into why that is in this film. And she's ready to, she's 3 steps ahead of folks almost all the time. And then when she's not, and all of a sudden she's thrown, she pivots very well. Her driver, which is power, control, is interesting in this film, because it's a little more nuanced than that kind of thing might normally be.
Is there a struggle for your character to kind of to go in between the lines of like the gray area?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, Mel is coming into the workforce. I think she has probably a lot of big ideas and a lot of, she's quite optimistic and wants to be like a force of good in the world, and maybe doesn't fully understand what she signed up for with Val, but still wants to do a good job. So I think that's, very relatable, like for young people. And yeah, she kind of then has to figure out where she stands, and has, you know, that inner struggle of her own. Yeah.
It's human emotions that you play so well in your characters. You get deep into their psyche, but with this one, the stakes are higher, because it doesn't affect one person or a group of people, it affects the world. What was the process of adding that element, and how much fun was it that you get to make the inner emotions kind of spread out more.
Yeah, I think like, from the time I was hired on the movie, Eric Pearson had written this, great movie that had Sentry in it, along with Brian Chapek, the executive producer at Marvel. And, once you have that character in the film, in talking to Paul Jenkins, who created the character in that first run, it always was this parable for mental health, but obviously exploded to world stakes. And so that felt very, very natural to the film. It felt like it had to be at that level. And then that, that's sort of what you want, is to tell a story that feels personal, like that anyone can connect to. And then, the comic book side of it is, there are world stakes to that journey and getting out of there. And yeah, that you get to do it on that scale with something that personal, that feels like such an opportunity.
Well, I feel like it's easy to get into that mental state with anti-heroes and villains. Were there other characters that you were thinking like, man, it would be great to include them into this kind of worldly stakes as well and mental state?
Not once the team was really set from the time I got hired. I know there's this thing out there. Yes, when I was first pitching on it, before it really became the movie that it was, and before Sentry was even on the team or in the movie, I had said it would be funny if Man-Thing were in here, but that went away very quickly and was not considered by anyone else. So, I think it was more about, this felt like such an incredible group of actors and such a rich set of characters who had gone through so much, that it was more about finding an architecture to tie all of them together and finding a way to explore that conflict in a way that would feel sort of internal, but a way to externalize it as well. We're sure, like, how are they going to beat that guy? And it's like, yeah, not in the normal way, but is there a way that doesn't feel just like a talk down, that you could get there in a way that honored being an action movie and a summer blockbuster, but also work on an internal scale.
Fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC.